Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is November 6th. I've eaten my Wheaties, worked out, meditated a little bit. I got myself a ridiculously large bottle of water. Good old Icelandic water. It's pretty good stuff. So I'm ready to go. You guys ready to go? This is going to be a long video. It is live. I haven't really prepped too much for it, just been thinking about it. So it's going to be a big stream of consciousness, and we are going to talk about how a person would build basically decentralized Twitter using the cryptocurrency industry, best available components and pieces that we have. So I am going to do a whiteboard, and I'll just share my screen, and we'll just kind of start chipping away at it little by little, and hopefully we get somewhere. So it might be a few hours, might be 30 minutes. I don't know. It's stream of consciousness. And this video is to, of course, the Twitter staff and Elon Musk. I hope you guys watch it, enjoy it. And my hope is it gives you some inspiration as you think about what is required to actually build a decentralized social network. Okay, so having given you a little preamble, let's share the screen. Wow! There we go. Okay. All right, so first things first, let's bring up the whiteboard. Now, when we talk about a decentralized social network, that's a kind of a difficult thing because we don't quite have a really good term for what exactly is decentralized. Technically, a social network is composed of thousands or millions or even billions of people. So when you look at the social network side, it's already kind of really decentralized. You have all of these people floating around doing things, and they're connected in various different ways, and information is flowing between them. But there's more to the story than just nodes with connections between them. Social networks tend to have certain nodes that have a high degree of clustering. There tends to be a small diameter. Okay, so diameter is basically the, if you pick any node, can you get to another node in a certain amount of hops? This is the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. If you guys are curious to look that one up. Okay, and you tend to have a situation where there needs to be some sort of overarching curation. And that's where the centralization tends to come in. So that curation usually is behind storage, information flow, computation. There's AI-assisted stuff. And there's dozens of other factors that make this quite hard. So in the cryptocurrency space, we're pretty good at peer-to-peer. We're pretty good at protocols. We're pretty good at cryptography. We're pretty good at incentives engineering. Okay, we're pretty good at a lot of these different types of things. Not necessarily super good at AI. We're not necessarily good at decentralizing computation. We're not necessarily good at decentralizing storage. Curation, well, we can think of that like maybe a DAO for organizational design. You can think about maybe a smart contract. Who knows? And so it's a really interesting challenge, actually, at its core of how does one build a decentralized social network? So let's think about Twitter as the case study. And then I have some papers, and we'll kind of work our way towards a straw man design. So in Twitter, you as a user, you sign up, you create a profile. Okay, so you create that profile, and let me tell them all about interesting stuff, and then you select your preferences. Okay, and then you've entered the great network. Okay, the Twitter network at that point. All right, and then you can view the tweet space. That's what I'll call the place where you can see everything. So it's that box where all of your tweets are. You have tweet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so when we talk about curation, we go up here and we say, hey, curation. Really, curation and information flow, that's the algorithm that Elon is talking about, saying potentially is biased or there's an issue. When people talk about shadow banning, this is what they're talking about. When people talk about bias, this is what they talk about. Because what you see as a user is completely dependent upon some form of an algorithm that basically filters the flow of all information from the social graph. So all of these different users, these different nodes, as they are sending tweets, they have to be ordered, and some decisions have to be made of what you see, when you see it, and how you see it. Okay, so this is kind of the crux of the Twitter experience. And each step here, from how you sign up, how you create a profile, how you select your preferences, or they are discovered. All right, it's kind of like AI assisted. The more information they have about you, the more they can infer what you like and what you don't like. The end goal is to give you the best possible tweet space view of all of these things. Then if you can view it, you can interact with it. Okay, so this is step 4. And then 5 is interact with the tweet space. Okay, and you don't actually have a lot of behaviors you can do there. You can add a tweet, so you can tweet. Okay, you can comment, so that's reply. You can like, so I guess that's the little heart thing that they have. There you go. You can quote. Okay, so that's just basically a reply plus retweet. Okay, and then there's retweet, which allows it to spread. And that's usually what's called a contagion factor. How quickly can things spread throughout a network? And there's all kinds of models that you can use to study those types of things. So, algorithm. Algorithm is built to maximize your level of engagement and the time you spend in the tweet space. So it wants you to be scrolling forever. It wants you to be interacting forever. It wants you to be liking and quoting and commenting and retweeting forever. Okay, so one of the first problems with that approach is that this has nothing to do with the quality of information. In fact, it's actually the opposite. It's negatively correlated. High quality, very deep information tends to be nuanced and require quite a bit of time to digest. And what that effectively does is it either takes you out of the tweet space, okay, or it slows you down. And you don't want the algorithm, if you're maximizing for advertising revenue, to take a person out or slow them down. Take a person out means they've clicked a link and they've left your platform, they've gone somewhere else, they're reading an article, they're doing something, they're not in the tweet space, they're not doing stuff. Slow them down means that they're not adding, commenting, liking, quoting, retweeting, okay? Because some of the things that are inside the tweet space are actually advertisers. So people pay to get your ad eyeballs. So at the end of the rainbow, it's always important to understand that you are the product. Here, when you create your profile and you select your preferences, these things allow the network to micro-target you. And the advertisers pay buku money to be able to do contextual ads. And they want to make sure that you are always either looking at their stuff, commenting on their stuff, liking their stuff, quoting their stuff, retweeting their stuff. And the only time you're taken out of the moment is if you're going to an advertiser. So the algorithm is optimized with a disincentive to go to good information, so non-paid information, high quality information. It's incentivized to maximize your level of participation with advertiser content, either to see it or directly interact with it. But other than that, just keep sharing, just keep participating. That is the current state of Twitter, and that's why everything is so fucked up. In fact, there's great books. One is called Surveillance Capitalism, and there's a litany of other books that if you just go to Amazon and search, you can find them. Recently published that talk about how these types of algorithms work on Facebook, Twitter, and other places. So if we're going to build a decentralized social network, the first question you have to ask yourself is, do you want more of the same, or do you want something different? Just because you go put the D back in decentralized doesn't really guarantee that this algorithm is going to go away. Okay, unfortunately, this guy has been around for quite a long time, and unfortunately this person makes billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars every year for Google, for Facebook, and for Twitter. They're not exactly going to go ahead and fire him. That's the last person to get laid off. And so you not only have to figure out how do you handle the curation challenges of billions of messages. How do you store not just terabytes, but exabytes of data? How do you get the network resources to allow exascale data to flow? Every video shared, every picture shared, every tweet shared. If just to give you a sense of it, for Twitter's traffic, if you sum up all of the cryptocurrency storage, so every single blockchain storage, okay, all the storage of Bitcoin, all the storage of Ethereum, all the storage of Dogecoin, Cardano, so the size of every blockchain with a full node, you sum them all up together for the entire 13-year history of the cryptocurrency space, that would be less than an hour of traffic on Twitter. Okay, so you can't use a blockchain structure for all that data flow and storage and moving it all around. Just will not work in any cryptocurrency. And obviously, we don't really have a lot of cool computation and AI-assisted stuff. All right, lots of transactions, lots of things, lots of streaming, lots of discretization. So we need massive infrastructural innovations. Okay, and then we need over here a business model innovation. Because the algorithm is not built for what we would like to have, which is that over time, the quality of info increases. That's what we'd like to have. We wouldn't like a situation that over time the quality decreases. And unfortunately, that's where we're at in the social media space. All right, well, let's start chipping away at this a little bit. So first off, let's start in the very beginning, the representation of people. So we have a pretty good solution for this. If you look up here, we have this concept of a DID, a decentralized identifier. And this is an open standard from the W3C. So the W3C is not just a small organization. These are the guys that standardize a lot of the cool stuff inside the web, like HTML and CSS and so forth. And for a very long time, many people, my company and others, Microsoft, IBM, have been working very hard at trying to create a standard for representation of identity. Not just of people, but agents. So smart contracts, IoT sensors, autonomous vehicles, and so forth. So right off the bat, you should represent your users as DIDs. Okay? For your candidate solution. So when we go here, we go down here. I'll change our colors up a little bit. We'll put some orange in there. All right. So when you sign up, you get a DID. Okay, and that DID has two parts. There's a DID address, so DID ID, and then there's a DID document. The ID is basically just a string of characters, kind of like a web address, and the document is the actual description, the metadata, and everything that's associated with it. So they're interconnected to each other. So when you sign up, you get a DID, and when you create your profile, that's you filling out the document. And you have two workflows here. Okay. You have verified and unverified. So your first major decision point you have to come up to when you create these types of things is what level of verification do you want your users to have, and who is responsible for that level of verification that the users are going to have. So there's some cool protocols, like for example, Han Shang over at Virginia Commonwealth University created something called Proof of Human. And there's some follow-up work that could do. It's like a super CAPTCHA. So you can certainly verify that a person is not a bot. There's plenty of different ways to do that. Okay, so you probably don't want somebody to be a machine. So no robot. So no bot. On the unverified, you have to say, well, people are going to make a lot of claims. They'll say, I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm the president. And usually what ends up happening is you have some form of an IDV, a provider like Acuant or others, that can help you sort out, and credentialing bodies that can help you sort out whether these things are true or false. Okay? So you just kind of have to work your way through that. So during account creation, there's a question of granularity and how much you want in that profile and how much is going to be verified in the profile. Most social networks, because they want to maximize user acquisition, they make it very easy to follow this flow, so you can get as little friction as possible. The problem with that flow is that you end up getting lots of false accounts or inaccurate accounts. So basically accounts that are kind of bad. Okay, so DIDs are great because it's now an identity ecosystem. It's blockchain neutral. It's standards, and there's tons of infrastructure that's being built. We have some called Atala Prism that we designed for Cardano, but it's also cross-blockchain, so it'll work on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all kinds of things. And Prism V2 is coming out in Q1 of next year, and it's based on everything that we did in Ethiopia, at Dish, and other places, and it's a massive improvement over the existing framework that we have. So we're pretty good at the issuance. You can store these on a blockchain, like the Cardano blockchain or Dogecoin or these types of things. And then on the document side, what you do is you create an API ecosystem where you have verification as a service. Okay, so basically people come in and they offer the ability for people to verify things on their profile. Now, right off the bat, I think what we should do is augment some of these standards a little bit. And there's actually a piece of crypto that the Algorand guys have been working on that is quite good. And I want to give a shout out to them and just point it out as an example of something we can add here. So over here, there's Falcon, fast Fourier lattice-based compact signatures over Entrue. So this actually, they've been working with NIST, and I believe it's becoming a NIST standard, Falcon. These are some of the smallest and best signatures. It's a post-quantum signature scheme, and they've done some great work cleaning it up and making it where it needs to go. But this is basically something that seems to be resistant against quantum computers. The underlying hard problem is a short integer solution problem, SIS, over Entrue lattices, for which no efficient solving algorithm is currently known in the general case, even with the help of quantum computers. So right off the bat, not only do you have an opportunity to represent identity in a new way, which is universal, and create a marketplace for verification where third parties can come in and verify all kinds of things about people, you can actually put things like Falcon in and associate them with the DID document. So you can have next generation cryptography that is immune to quantum computers. Okay, so why would you want to do that? Well, when you enter the tweet space here and you tweet or you quote, you're actually adding content. The problem Twitter has is that none of that is signed. So if somebody hacks your account, they can impersonate you. Okay, so if you have a signature system that sits with the creation of the DID, and you put a good thing like Falcon or any of these other next generation things in, then you actually have an unforgeable signature that you can use for every tweet you produce, and you can associate that with the user. So you can always prove who you are. You can sign contracts with it, and every tweet you have is verified now. The other thing is that you can layer more sophisticated crypto on top of it. And that's what we're doing with the Prism framework. So our goal is eventually to have zero knowledge crypto. Right now, a lot of people think about zero knowledge for scalability and privacy, but you also can use zero knowledge crypto for basically Boolean proofs about things like, for example, did you pay your taxes or not? Are you a U.S. resident or not? Are you allowed to see this content? Are you over the age of 18? Yes or no? Like, for example, there's a question of adding OnlyFans style content to Twitter. Elon's been talking about that. So allow content creators to charge people to see their videos. Almost certainly some of that content will be adult content. So you need an age verification. Okay, and these types of things. So the framework that allows you to extensively add crypto and add more crypto and more crypto eventually allows you to build up to things like one-click age verification, and creating a verified marketplace basically allows third parties to come in, provide those services, and do a profit share with the provider. In this case, it'll be Twitter. All right, then you select your preferences, and you know that's fine. You can just copy the existing experience that Twitter has. But then when you interact with the tweet space, this is where you start making some major changes to the guts of what you're trying to accomplish. So if your goal is to never take you out or never slow you down and just have you continue consuming, so the robot up here can keep making money, then you leave it as it is. But I'd like to believe that we want to innovate. We want to do something cool. So let's kind of break this down. First off, when you take a look at a piece of content, whatever that content is. Okay, so this piece of content, it has a bunch of claims. It has some evidence. It has an origin. Okay, there's all kinds of stuff that you can put inside that bucket. And the question is, do you know any of that stuff? Okay, so you know, if somebody says something like Trump died of a heart attack. Breaking news. In Florida. All right, that could be a tweet. You'd probably see that tweet. And so that's a huge tweet, right? It's a huge claim. So wait, what evidence is presented? Who is the person tweeting it? There's all kinds of things that you're going to think about whenever you see something like that. Breaking news. Okay, is it Reuters that just said this? Is it just some random account? So there's a lot of referential stuff. Now, right now, my options to interface with it is this heart. Okay, I got that little thing here. I got my retweet, and then I got a comment. That's all I have. So if I heart, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know. If I retweet, I'm retweeting without context. I'm not making any assertion about it, but what I am doing is spreading it. So I'm increasing the contagion factor of it. I can certainly reply to it. I can comment on the tweet. And that reply, I could say, I don't believe it or whatever, but I'm engaging with it. And what's happening is the algorithm is actually, the more engagement it gets, more likely than not, it's going to enter more and more people's tweet space. Why? Because it increases the level of engagement for everybody. It's controversial news. Have we gained anything from this? Have we learned anything from this? Is there any consequence for people sharing it? Is there any consequence for people liking it? These types of things, especially if they know it's not true. So what you'd ideally like to do is to improve the nuance of these mechanics of how you interface with things that you see inside your tweet space. So, for example, have many more options than just a like. So you could have things like suspicious. You could have things like dislike, like a downvote. So you can start curating these types of things. You can have things like tell me more, fact check, etc., etc. You can create a whole catalog of things that people can request. We are dealing with crypto. The superpower of crypto is it's a payment system as well. So the power of having a payment system with tokens is, guess what you can do? You can put bounties. So you actually offer money if people do certain things. So you already have a smart contract option and a catalog of requests that people can have, and you can create a marketplace around desires for curation. Retweet. You can have retweet with context. So that's just a stronger form of clicking a button. You can add all kinds of things, commentary and so forth. People would argue that the quote is this way, but there's got to be some simpler mechanisms, like, for example, something to slow the contagion down. It's like, I think this is actually fake news as opposed to real news. Okay. And then replies, they tend to get lost pretty quickly. So the problem is the system tends to lack memory. Unless you get a really zinger of a reply, that particular tweet and its entire thread, that tends to deteriorate a little bit. So you could actually do all kinds of things with a cryptocurrency in this respect. You could turn each tweet into an NFT, for example, and it can have a reputation score. By the way, at account creation, you can have every user, when they get a did, also associate that did with an NFT. And this is called a progressive NFT. So a progressive NFT is one that grows over time. We're doing this with Crypto Bison, and we're doing it for entertainment. Okay. But you can do that if you really want to. So if you treat this as something that is an object unto itself, it can be taken, moved around, extracted, analyzed, played with. Old conversations can be archived, pulled up. They have a copious amount of metadata, And then also you can start inferring a notion of reputation, and that reputation can work its way to the people who interface with the information. So if you have a habit of sharing things that turn out to be misinformation, like every Thursday you kind of tweet out Trump died of a heart attack or these types of things, and he didn't, you're proven wrong, then you can be lower on the totem pole. And if you have a habit of sharing really nice information, then suddenly you create an account that actually has more value behind it, more weight behind it. The other thing is that in these marketplaces, these can become what are called prediction markets. Robin Hanson is the big guy here. And basically, you can create a marketplace for a person's belief of truth of the thing that's been reported. And there's money behind it. So it's like saying, well, who's going to win the election on Tuesday? We have a big, big election in the United States on Tuesday, November 8th. Well, some people say, oh, I think the Republicans are going to win. And some people say, I think the Democrats are going to hold the House. Well, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to put money behind it. Are you willing to put $100 down that the Republicans are going to retake the House? Are you willing to put $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, and so forth? So you can create marketplaces for the truthiness of information, and you can create a bounty system. For example, the person who tweeted this, they can also even put what's called a veracity bond. So a veracity bond is basically money that they put on the table that they stand behind that tweet. And if it turns out that that tweet is false, they lose the money. So all of a sudden, your tweet space looks very different. You have much more nuanced tools that are extensible to curate the information, and you have economic agency behind the information. Okay, so you can put money on the table. You can create prediction markets on the table for these types of things. The people tweeting and sharing it have reputation, so they have something to lose for it. Veracity bonds can be put into place. They can lose money in these types of things. You also can have a situation where there's a realm for incompleteness. So all kinds of news is shared. It'd be nice to say, well, is this unverified? Is this verified? Under what circumstances is this verified? And so forth. This curation right now in the centralized social network is where most of the people are running into the big problems with Twitter, Facebook, and these other networks, because they're sharing things that they think are true, but then the fact checkers are basically saying, we don't believe that they are. We think that they're false. And not only are they deplatforming the content, meaning removing the content from the tweet space, they're actually creating account level measures, and i.e. banning people for sharing what they feel is bad stuff. Okay, so we're just kind of working our way through this. And so we've already discovered that we can sign tweets. And by the way, having digital credentials associated with your account means that your accounts are all super secure. It also means that your users can move around, and the reputation scores and the users themselves can actually live in a decentralized protocol. When you follow somebody, instead of just following them, you should actually subscribe to them, like a pub sub. Okay. And we've been working on that technology for quite some time. So this was something in the incentivized testnet that we actually play around with. It was called Poldercast. It came out in 2011. And one of the use cases they actually were talking about is a decentralized Twitter. So the basic idea of Poldercast was a decentralized pub sub protocol. Now, we learned an enormous amount from Poldercast. And actually what we did is we contacted the author of the paper and cut him a check. And now we're updating the paper to create a better pub sub protocol based upon a lot of things we've learned and a lot of things that they learned. But actually some of the people who participated in the decentralized incentivized testnet, they'll tell you stories about their experiences with it. But basically a follow can be now much more meaningful, because what you can do is now subscribe to a feed. Now, the current Twitter algorithm just kind of mixes everything up. So when you follow somebody, it's not a guarantee that the things that they tweet will appear inside your tweet space. But what you could do is break it from one unified view to an extended view. So let's go there. This is kind of now going into the realm of what Mastodon does, but you can have this idea of these extended domains. So your tweet space would kind of live here, but you can choose to move your eyeballs into any of these areas. And these can be different curation rules. These can be things like my friends or my follows, so they're exclusive information. These can be things like trending. And this is kind of a representation of that aggregation, but you can have as many circles as you want. Now, a protocol would treat these circles and the box as programmable. So that curation is something that you would be able to select. So for example, let's say that you're an advertiser and you only want your ads to appear under a certain curation regime. Okay, we'll call you super woke, corp. Not to quote anybody, but you only wanted to appear under a certain curation regime, something that lives here. Okay. Well, what you can do is say, well, I'm only going to have advertised content in this particular box because it conforms with my values. So my brand knowledge reputation will not appear over here. That's a different part of the world. And then over here, you could have Gun Corp, evil Gun Corp. Here we go. Got to be bipartisan in your criticism, right? So evil Gun Corp. And they say, oh no, we only want our ads to appear here, and we don't want anything to appear over here. So these circles and these boxes are quite programmable. And really, you have to think a lot about how do people announce to the network who they want to follow. That is basically a pub sub. You subscribe to people. And then you have to have the ability to have multiple circles, some that are curated by the network, some that are derived, some that are curated by the user, and then some that are an effect of basically some safety provisions that are put in, and people either follow them or they don't. Like, for example, you could say something when you have these new tools to share information and you start talking about the curation of that information, you could say, I only want to see things that have a veracity bond behind them, meaning that people have actually put money on the table. So, if CNN or MSNBC or if Fox News, they claim, hey, we stand behind our journalism, then the user can say, okay, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all these other people, Bloomberg, are you willing for every tweet that you make about your stories to put $1,000 on it? And if you turn out to be wrong, proven wrong, you lose the money. Ooh, that's a very different thing. Yes. And by the way, if you can NFT these things, they have a history behind them. They can be traded, they can be owned. They can be referenced and recalled, and they're immutable, time-stamped, and auditable. They can never be deplatformed or taken down. What does that effectively mean? It means that you now can look at people's track record. That reputation metric that you would apply to a user node when somebody signs up, a person over here, this guy, would also apply to a corporation. It would apply to a political party. Ubiquitous curation in that way. Suddenly the powers that be are held a little bit more liable, aren't they? Yeah, that's interesting. So something like Polarcast for the PubSub protocol. Okay. You'd have to come up with a protocol for how you want to do your circles and your boxes. So the boxes are multiple views. So the tweet space, right now you have a consolidated view, but you'd be able to switch between them. It could almost be like Spotify playlists where you can adopt other people's views and these types of things. And then you can also set your own and put custom logic and rules by how you want to build that particular view. And that's going to be endemic on how the information is curated in that respect. By the way, there are people who try really hard to come up with some principles on proper curation of content. And there's something called the Santa Clara principles on transparency, accountability, and content moderation. And a lot of different people came together on this. 12 big companies, Apple, Facebook, Google, Reddit, Twitter, and GitHub, have endorsed it. They don't really follow it, but they endorse them. And there's some content ideas, and there's all kinds of people who kind of talk about it. So this would be an example of a view. So you could have a Santa Clara view. So one of your tweet boxes could be under that. One of them could be Anarchy Land and live here. And you actually have both views, and you can see both things, and you can toggle between them. And you can use prediction markets and other things to create basically marketplaces for information curation. Now, how does an advertiser interact with this? Because when you create this DID document, you're generating lots of personal data. Okay, so you own your own DID, you potentially own your document. Well, there's a great venture. I'm using the Brave browser. Well, the Brave browser was built on this concept of the basic attention token, BAT. You should expand that. So what we should do is create an advertising marketplace. And what you do is you say that the user owns their own data. Okay. And then you create a token. This is a token to basically create a direct relationship between the ad and the owner. They want to micro-target. They want them to see things, and they want it to be placed there. Well, these curation domains, you can actually connect them and use a token to display ads. BATS has done a really great job constructing an ecosystem there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just take that model, refine it, improve it. And then there's one thing that I'd like to add to it. We have something called Kachina, Foundations of Private Smart Contracts. So if you're going to do a lot of private data mining, this is a paper that we came up with, and we're working real hard on it. Then I think if you take that and you combine it with private data mining, then you can have an entire ad ecosystem. Suddenly, everything is starting to come together, because this advertising token could also be used to give economic agency to the information. Advertisers could offer bounties for things for participation. You could do tips. You can do micropayments. You can create prediction markets with it. There's an actual natural use for this content, for the creation of all these things. Also, these are NFTs if you want to make them, which means that they also potentially have embedded intellectual property. So you can create marketplaces to trade them. So artists can just simply release the rights to their movies, their videos, other things as tweets. And if people actually want to buy a license or not, then they can pay with that same system, that same advertising token effectively. Okay. Now, how does Doge connect to this? Well, Doge will not be able to provide any notion of any of this infrastructure. All of this stuff is well beyond it, because it's a fork of Bitcoin. And I'm not being critical of the Doge ecosystem. This is frankly true of most cryptocurrencies. What this needs to be is this needs to be a side chain. Okay. And I'll explain why in my thinking behind it. This needs to be a side chain, and it needs to be a Web 2.5 application. The goal here should not be to build some ubiquitous decentralized social network protocol, because the problem is that you have to solve a decentralized network, a decentralized storage, and decentralized computation, and actually completely resolve all of that and make it incentives compatible and profitable. People are working on it, like the Chias and the Filecoins and the Heliums and the World Mobiles and all these others to do these types of things. But that's a lot of work. And, you know, if Elon wants to do this next year or within a 3 to 5 year horizon, and he wants to use something in our industry to do it, then it's just not going to happen in that respect. So what you do is you do a sidechain. You say, okay, well, the immutability, the did space, the censorship resistance, the auditability, the payment system. These are the kinds of things that you care a lot about. And generally speaking, what a sidechain does is it takes a layer one, okay, so let's say Cardano, and we spent a lot of time, effort, and money as an ecosystem to build a very solid root of trust. There's these 3,000 stake pool operators. So what you do is you sort them, and then you create a sidechain. And then you can run it with a super fast BFT protocol. Okay, and here's an example of one. Narwhal and Tusk. It was from George Genezes at UCL and a bunch of other people. And it's a BFT DAG-based mempool efficient consensus protocol. 600,000 transactions per second without any latency issues. Okay, and that's because basically they're able to bootstrap it from a trusted source. So you could take Cardano and then you can do a super fast BFT protocol and you get ultra high speed throughput. And then what's nice about that is if you structure the security model in just the right way, you get immutability, you get censorship resistance because it has the same security properties of the main ledger. It's a blockchain, so you get auditability, and now you have an enormous TPS rate. But what you can do is you can augment that sidechain with service providers. And they can provide the storage. They can provide, things like IDVs, so for verification marketplaces and these types of things. So this is actually really nice for the Fabric ecosystem, IBM Fabric from Hyperledger. And the concept is that your service utilities you can express in chain code. And you can write as many of them as you need to provide all of these things. And then basically what you do is you take the distribution of Doge, okay, and then you do an airdrop. They live here, and Doge becomes the advertising token and the veracity token and the marketplace token for prediction markets and the token required to issue NFTs and all these types of things. And we can embed that with all the logic, extended UTXO, so it can be a great system. You can put Plutus smart contracts on it or other languages, like you can make an EVM system if desired. You do all kinds of things, but I'd recommend doing Cardano-like things because we understand that. But yeah, so you take something like Fabric, you put a super fast BFT protocol on it. You combine it with bespoke chain code to basically build a Doge's ledger, and then you add Prism capabilities to this, and that basically gives the identity layer. So you have a strong crypto layer, you have an identity layer, and you have all this magic here, and then you just basically do an airdrop of Doge over, and users can redeem on this sidechain. The sidechain would be able to handle all of the traffic, and then you combine some of the things that Dionysus Zindros and others have been working on, this concept like proof of stake, these things, this idea of chain-free mining. So you had log space mining and these other things, because you're going to have gargantuan amounts of data here. And basically the people that maintain consensus would only have a small part of the overall state. And then you'd have archive nodes that basically live behind. And those archive nodes are an example of service providers. And they provide that availability because that's the Twitter company. That's their interface. So that's why it's a Web 2.5, because there's going to be a lot of little stuff that is super fucking hard to put into a blockchain space. And really the core innovation here is you're creating a marketplace for information curation, a marketplace for advertising with various values behind it, and a gigantic identity engine. And that's what you want to focus on for your version 2. You don't want to figure out how do I build a decentralized storage system and all this other stuff. You just basically have service utilities and you plug them in, and these things would work quite well. And chainless mining, these types of things are the kinds of protocols that will get you where you need to go. And there's already enough innovation in the BFT space that I'd say within about 18 to 36 months, you can have a bespoke protocol that would be able to meet the needs of Twitter's daily transaction volume, in a sense. And then, of course, all the data is here, so AI can be added and marketplaces can be formed. So this is basically kind of some free-form thoughts, but as you can see, it's a very, very complicated thing, and we've only barely scratched the surface of it, but we've already made ourselves post-quantum. We've already completely reconstructed identity around a new standard that's significantly better. We've created a marketplace for verification, so Elon doesn't have to figure out how to verify everybody and every claim. You can just basically put all it in. We've created in the tweet space, instead of just an algorithm that's optimized to make money and then at the same time make you angry, you've created a marketplace for people to kind of derive the type of information they care to be. You've created a reputation system, and you can track not only people, but organizations in that respect. And you can now demand that media organizations be honest about the things that they follow. And if they don't, they lose money. You can have different views for different philosophies, and you can subscribe to people's views. And so if you want to see what a left-wing person's viewpoint in tweet space looks like, you can, like a Spotify playlist, subscribe to it. You can do the same thing with a right-wing person and so forth. You have a token, and that token is basically Doge. And you already have a fair distribution of it. So you just do an airdrop, and it's basically a BAT token. It's a Web 2.5 application. You could take something like Fabric or any of these permission blockchains, put a super fast BFT protocol that's built bespoke for it, alongside a PubSub protocol and some network improvements. And then you can create all these service utilities, and you just have to get to a certain density of them and add chainless mining to it so that they don't have to have the state of the entire system. Technology like Mithril would mean that every single that's something we're building for Cardano, but every single transaction that people see, they're able to verify client side without having a full copy of the blockchain. So given that these things grow so large, you need to have that kind of technology for inclusive accountability. What's nice is that advertising token, as this network grows, is likely to be worth tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in its total market cap. And as a Web 2.5 application, Twitter probably can print it. So which means it can use it similar to how Tesla used season equity offerings and other things to do fundraising and grow the Tesla gigafactories and these types of things. So this can be used to basically retool the entire system. And as open infrastructure, basically people can build against it and have much, much easier times navigating all of it. Something like this will exist. It's going to happen. We haven't even talked about like the message layer of the system. If you want to do direct messages with people, well, we can just integrate the Signal protocol. And Signal's not just an app, it's an actual protocol. But because we have post-quantum, you can implement a Signal protocol that actually has post-quantum comm channels. So quantum computers can't break your communications, these types of things. Every user's verified. They have public keys, these types of things inside the system. So you can sign messages, do all kinds of things. You can put MPC protocols in, and those MPC protocols could be used to have disappearing messages and trusted enclaves and so forth. All kinds of stuff can be done to basically do this. But what have we achieved? We have a system that, if it's tethered to a layer one that's getting more decentralized over time, this gets more decentralized over time but never loses speed. System that's super programmable and extensible and flexible. We also have a system that's creating a marketplace that you can tune any way you want, and you can tune it for the increasing of information quality. People feel comfortable building against this because it's an open protocol, and even if Twitter itself didn't like people doing things, other people can interface with it and build their own on and off ramps. So technically Jack Dorsey could do that. Other people could do that. Polarcast 2 will likely give you everything you need on the subscription model, And then the advertisers now basically have a much better relationship. And using technology like Kachina, you can actually mine enormous amounts of information, which means during the profile creation and account creation part, they can share a lot. So those are some preliminary thoughts of basically how decentralized Twitter would work. It's a big task. It's a heavy lift. It's a lot of engineering. It's a lot of clever stuff. But at the end of the rainbow, we have to solve it because this guy right here is destroying society. It's why we all hate each other. And it's why everybody's so angry all the time. It's why our politics have become so toxic. The algorithms have created incentives for us not to listen to each other and be angry with each other. And if we're going to get out of it, we have to make it more profitable to make money to be nice to each other. Okay? Better curation of information, these types of things. And I believe we can get there if we really care to get there. It's something I'm very passionate about, and it's why I designed Cardano the way I designed it. We designed it to be amenable for sidechains just like this. And as we enter the age of Voltaire, these are the kinds of things I'm going to focus a lot more effort on. Now, if you're an ADA holder, where would we make money? Well, the SPOs who would be maintaining this ledger, they would be paid block rewards, just like the Doge miners are currently paid block rewards. But obviously, those now go to the network. So if you hold an ADA, then in addition to getting ADA rewards, you'd also get Doge rewards as well. You'd get both tokens. So it's a partnership in that respect. Cardano provides decentralization, security, infrastructure, and an ecosystem to this advertising Doge. And the Doge community basically is the currency of a social network. And they provide all of that cool stuff. So something to think about. Let me see here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was a lot of fun. We kept it under an hour. All right. And I hope this starts a great conversation amongst everybody. And we'll, of course, keep chipping away at it. It's a very busy year for me, so can't do much more this year on this. But I said I was going to make a video kind of explaining some of these basic concepts. And if you stuck with me the entire time, I hope you learned a few things, if anything, the complexity of all of this. And if you happen to be working on a decentralized social network and you're thinking about it, we're open for business as an ecosystem. And maybe this will give you some things to think about for your own stuff. And when we get around to it as an ecosystem, I think we eventually will have a really, really cool model. And hopefully it solves a lot of cool stuff at the same time. So, good Sunday. Thanks for listening. And until next time.